Season 9, Episode 23, number 371, with a friggin' fantastic on ramp for me this morning. I don't know about you, but
Yeah, and the only hint I want to do at it is that I come away from the conversation with this question. When it comes to leadership, and this question about formal or informal leadership, or this idea of formal or informal, why are you there? Why are you there? And I'm starting from this perspective of um, purpose. Are you there because you put yourself there? Or are you there because someone else has put you there? And this comes to mind. I had a couple conversations over the past month, about there's the possibility of the leadership shifting in our special education department. And I had someone in leadership, just in a real sort of offhanded way, ask me directly if I was going to put my name in. Putting name in is like it's a bullshit statement, but that was kind of how I was feeling, because it's much more complex than just putting your name in. It's not like there's a goddamn hat on a table and you put a ballot in there. There's process, right? You have to possibly reformulate a resume, not necessarily a cover letter. If it's done internally, you have to have a sit down, professional conversation, or an interview. So it's not just like, I think putting name in is a way to kind of, it's almost like using that language when someone comes up to you like, can I just have a little conversation with you? So you make it diminutive, like it's not important, but you do that because it is important and you don't want to scare the shit out of the person for what you're about to say. Can I just have a minute of your time? Like, oh, okay. So it's just a conversation, a minute of time. And in that minute, they're like, you're an asshole. Like they lean into you about something, right? So it's funny how we make these really big things small, maybe because we're not brave enough to talk about them in their big form. You're going to put your name in for that leadership thing. So the big of the small in that was that in the conversation, the person asking me that, their agenda was revealed. They unfolded. And part of it is that they are not entirely satisfied with with what they're observing in let's say, the efficacy of the department. So partway through the conversation, I said to them, I said, are you asking me about this? Like, are you putting this in front of me because you think I can affect change? Or you just don't like what's in there? Like, you're just kind of flipping the flavor? And they flat out said a little bit of both. I'm like, okay, thank you for your honesty. So I'll just bring that back to where I started this. Like, as far as, as a leader, are you there? Are you there at somebody else's behest? And is that even a word? Did I say that right? Behest? Is that right? Behest?
the ESL boy would say yes.
Yes. Okay, there we go. So at somebody else's behest. So are you there? Are you there because someone else wants you there? Are you there because you put yourself there? And I think this is a pretty intense, I've come to recognize it's been a pretty intense struggle for me. Like, who am I leading for? I would probably argue that I was doing it for me, but there is a part of me that does enjoy being told I'm leading well and that I'm making good choices. And I tend to, one part where that can come from is just anybody that notices. But I do flourish when somebody who I do consider to be superior to me in a certain skill set notices that I'm doing something well. So it's like a mentor or coach, that, because I'm an apprentice at heart. I do learn well from the crafts person that I consider to be more crafty than me. So that's my takeaway from our convo. It's this idea that I think it's really good to wonder about the agenda of individuals that want you to be a leader, and good to wonder about your own agenda, about why you crave to be a leader. Figuring out other people is slow work. It's even slower work sometimes than figuring it out for yourself, because people don't often reveal why they would say to you, hey, you know what, you should become an administrator. At one point I got kind of cheeky. I'm like, there must be some sort of a commission for this, because I didn't take it as I actually was doing anything, notable, but I had several admin during TPA sessions say, yeah, like, have you considered? And I think, it's, again, it's far more complex than just an attaboy, put your name in for it. Because as I've gotten to know more administrators, I do know that, for some of them, when they do say to somebody, are you going to consider this path, is that they are invested in it. They do think like they need someone like you, whoever the you is, they need someone, they need leadership. The board needs leadership. But you got me thinking about this today, as in, whose agenda am I operating under here? Am I operating under the agenda that somehow the system needs me to be in that position? Or am I operating under the agenda that I need to be that person? I crave to do that leadership, and to just discover what that becomes. So I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if I'm going to put my name in the hat for that leadership position. And that would have bugged me, and it still does kind of low-key bug me, that I can't commit, that I can't make it clear for myself as to whether I would or I wouldn't. Bugs me a little bit that I can't discern. But I really don't know. I don't know if I do want to put my name in for that. And this isn't, at one time I would have been talking about this from the point of view of manifestation, as in just to talk about it, as in I see myself in the role. I'm going to get the role. I'm going to get the role. I've come to understand myself that that's an ego response. I am not good at everything that I do. So I do not deserve every role that I apply for. So I have to step back from that. And by stepping back from that, whatever happens in the interview process is up to, between the person that's interviewing me, whether, and the other candidates, I guess, however they measure up. But I'm really starting to question my own agenda as far as what it is that drives me to sort of seek the leadership positions, and to kind of measure that against the agenda of, once I arrive there, do I want to operate under it? Do I want to, my brain says, trade off my own agency once I sort of get into that position? Don't know, dude. But why are you here? Why are you there? Why are you in that? And it could even be the headspace. We've both aspired to very specific leadership positions. And because of the long game of it, we were fortunate to learn things that, like, it's cool to have aspirations. It's better to have knowledge. And then you're like, that's not for me right now, right? And then other things, that's not for me. You just say, it's not for me. I would love to sort of shove this out to, Gary or Rochelle when if they're in the room and talking about the leadership, like, why are you here?
They are.
It goes back to yours and my, that short-lived podcast of, talk me through your process. And we got some of that from some of the leaders that we talked to on that podcast. And I feel like the whole process of putting that on the GPS, the best and worst thing that can happen to you in that process is to be surprised. It's the best and worst thing. And then how do you deal with that? I've mentioned before my whole belief system that it's at least a 3 to 5 year cycle before you actually get to the version of you that you believed you were selling at the interview for admin. The learning curve is just so steep that you spend a lot of time mastering the administrative side of it and the system side of it and the protocol side of it and the relationship side of it, that whatever version you were sort of thinking you could be as the admin, which I'm imagining is deeply, deeply influenced by whatever version of teacher you thought you were as you were leaving the classroom. It's just, for me, it sort of puts in this kind of weird context of professional identity crisis. So how do you tolerate that idea of being surprised that you actually can't deliver that exact, nor should you if you've grown, like 3 to 5 years later, you're not the same person that interviewed, obviously. I keep meaning to have that conversation with my spouse, who's now a principal. Can you see a through line from your last experience as a department head to now the principal, or do they feel like you've had to become 3 different people?
Yeah.
I'm out of coffee. I should put coffee maker down here.
Yeah, be like me. Along the way, as you were talking, there were so many things I wanted to say. I should have written them down. So that's what I'm going to do from this point forward, because I want to hit some stuff, but I've lost half of it just by listening to you instead of listening to you with my response in mind. I'm really happy that I talked to you this morning about where I am now, where I see myself, and why I see myself there. I feel really authentic with my position and my process, and it makes me think we should resurrect Talk Me Through Your Process, because now you and I, well, it's been how many years since we picked it up, and it was for formal leadership. I think we should expand and just go with check in with people on what they're doing. It doesn't have to be a formal leadership position.
Would you want to do it just through Decoded, or would you want to actually go back into the Talk Me Through Your Process?
Yeah, no, I want to do it through there, not through.
I
do not want to do anything to this podcast that would take us away from what we do on this podcast.
There will be no water muddying here.
I'm not interested in that. I don't know about you. Obviously, we co-host this, so I believe it's joint conversation, but what we do here, it's been so beneficial to my growth as a dad, as a husband, as a teacher. 9 seasons, bro, of breaking things down, talking about what's going on, how we operate in this world. I don't want to mess with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go back to the other one, and if there's somebody we want to have a conversation with about their process of whatever is they're doing or they've done, I think we break the mold. We don't need to talk to administrators in the educational setting. I really don't. And maybe that's why we walked away, because it was so funneled that we're like, yeah, we don't see that for ourselves the same way we did when we started it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no point in continuing. I think there's benefit to finding a point to going back there. But I mean, this is just me talking right now on a Saturday morning. Gary and Rochelle are here, and I know you know that by this point, but good morning, Gary, and good morning, Rochelle. Thanks for joining us. Um, I'm not sure which way to take this now because um oh, Rochelle, oh, you saw this, right? Rochelle said that's a good reflection. I hadn't thought of that before. I was I want to share like, oh, Rochelle also said that she believes that she has had perspective in being asked a question, both perspectives. It is great. It is great when people talk to you and about you in a positive way. It's great when people say to you, "Hey, I could see you doing this," right? Because we don't usually walk around telling people, we either tell them, "I think you'd be great in this role, you should consider it," or we just don't say anything at all. I mean, I don't walk around telling people, "I hope you're not considering this because I don't think you'd be good there at all." You know, I don't do that to people. But there have been a couple of things that have happened recently around here where people have talked about what does it really mean to attain a formal position of leadership? What does that really mean? And are the right people going into it for the right reasons? Are the wrong people going into it for the wrong reasons? How are people being selected? It's just like it can become too much, right? And I sent you an Instagram reel this morning about um, when you want something so bad, you do a lot of things to get what you want, whether those things are right or wrong. And I've been craving something recently, but realized yesterday that I'm not going to chase something using the wrong ways to try to get there because it's not worth my time. But I think at one point it was. And I'm starting to move past the I don't know what to call it. I guess I once harbored a lot of ill will towards certain people because of how I was treated along the way. And I'm slowly letting go of that. And what I'm more focusing on are the great stories that have come from them, or at least I feel like they're great stories. And those great stories are part of the path that's led me to where I am today. And I kind of really like where I am today. So I'm getting past, I really hate that person to I'm not fond of that individual, but let me share a story that came from my experience with them. It's a pretty cool place to be, and it's taken a long time to get there. Who knows what comes next, right? Like I said to you earlier, we work towards things, but we don't know. Like, will you
Mhm.
put your name in the hat for a leadership position in spec ed? Who knows? I think it's great that you're talking about it. You're thinking about it. It's on your mind. You'll see what you do next. I think you should come over here because we've got some leadership positions over here that need to be filled, and um, it would be great to work with you, but
Mhm.
it's not realistic for you to work here where you live today. But we have some real we have a real issue, in my opinion, right now in a space that I work in because our position's opening up, and at least the message I'm getting is nobody wants them. Nobody wants them is what the vibe I'm getting because of what they've seen, how they've seen it play out. That's another good thing too that I've come to realize that there are different ways of operating. For example, I have found myself doing things in my work where people say to me after, "Why are you doing that? Like, it seems like a lot of work. Why would you do that? Or what you're doing there is gonna come with a lot of heartache." And my response to them has been a couple of things. One is, I wish somebody had done that for my son, or like, I wish somebody had done that for my son. I
Mhm.
wish somebody would have reached out to me about what my son may have been experiencing and how I could help, or what's happening so that we have a fulsome perspective of the situation. That's one of them. The other one is based on how I've been treated along the way to where I am today. There are some ways I was treated, some things I experienced that were not good. So how can I alleviate that for other people? Or at least it's given me like a it's given me like a sketch for which ways to move. And so to some people, they're like, "Wow, why would you do that? Why would you put that much time and energy into that?" And I think because whether the payoff in the end will be good or not, it is the right thing to do. And yes, it's gonna be a pain in my side and or it's gonna take up a lot of my time, but then isn't that why I operate the way I do to get the little things done quickly so that I have the time to deal with the bigger things that nobody seems to wanna give time to? Isn't that why I do that? That's what I like, that's part of my operating system at work. I deal with the predictable as quickly as I can because there's always the big unpredictable situations that pop up, whether I bring them on myself or they just land on my desk. So then I think to myself, I don't need to think how those people think. What I need to do is follow kind of my heart and my mind in combination with like operating procedures at school and within the system to help kids be successful. How do I do that? Well, I'm gonna do it the way that I told my principal I was gonna do it. Stage 1 for me is always figure things out. I don't know what I'm doing, gotta figure things out. I'm past stage 1, I'm in stage 2. Stage 2 for me is where I get to innovate, where I get to, inject some of who I am into the situation, and that's the best part because I'm not you, and I'm not Gary, and I'm not Rochelle, I'm Roland, and with all my experiences and stuff along the way, I get to now inject that into situations I find myself in. And I'm told one of the reasons why I have this role is because of who I am and how I've done my work. So that's a big green light to me. And so as I'm injecting myself into the work, I call that innovation, right? I'm doing the job, but I'm doing it slightly differently because I believe the outcome will be better and that the people I'm working with will be served in a better way. That's friggin' sky's the limit there. And so I'm kind of done asking, "Can I do this? Should I do this?" It's more like, "No, I'm doing this. It won't bring harm. It will own it sh it shouldn't bring harm. If it brings harm, well, that was not my intention. I'll have to figure out what happened." But it doesn't appear that way. It appears as though I'm going the extra mile, which others see as like, "Oh, why would you do that?" And I'm like, "Because I'm innovating now. I know how to operate based on how I was trained. Now I'm innovating. Now I'm injecting myself into the role, into the job. And what brings me some joy and pleasure is that I've told people, "Can you please trust me? And please trust me. This is what I'm asking for. If you give me what I'm asking for this so that I can bump things up a level. So here's my request to you. if you if you're able to support my request, this is why I'm making the request. This is why this I'll make things even better. I'll make it better for the kids. I'll try to make it better for the teachers. I'd like everybody to as many people to benefit as possible. If you don't if you don't give me what I request, I don't know what it's gonna look like. And that's not a threat. It's just like I know my systems, I know my path. I know who to talk to for support. I'm in my second half of life. I get me better now than I got me many years ago. Trust me. And I'm happy to say that I work with people right now that do trust me and let me do my job. I really like it, bro. And the one thing I wanted to say that I didn't get a chance to say before that I realized recently as well. I didn't realize how hard it was for me to leave my re-engagement role and enter into my new role. I honestly didn't believe it was a big deal. It was hard to readjust to standard traditional school life. And I just thought, well, that's just the way it is, right? You operate a certain way. So obviously, when you have to shift, it's hard. But I've talked to a few people who have had roles like mine in that non traditional, professionally managed time roles. And they've said to me, I don't know how we landed on this, but they're like, you felt that way too? I'm like, yeah, I felt like nobody understood me. Nobody cared what I was going through, how hard it was to be pulled away from a freedom that is rarely seen in our profession and then be dropped back in a space with four walls, no freedom, and just like perform, perform, perform like a friggin' circus animal. They said they were like, "Oh my god, we felt the same way." Like we just felt so boxed in, locked in, prisoned, and nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about like the emotional component of that. And for some people, maybe it's not a problem, but thinking back, it was so hard for me. But you know what brought me peace, what kept me going was the admin team at my school, my principal saying, "You're good. Just you're good. Do your job, man. Like you're good." He was very much more open than other people would be, I in my opinion, and the team was, like, good. And then the team I was part of last year, um, it was easier to be locked in a room doing traditional work again with the people that surrounded me because they were so good at what they did that I trusted them, and eventually they trusted me. I or at least felt that way. If they didn't tell me, they didn't make it seem that way, but I was able to ease back in. Now I feel like, okay, I'm reacclimated to what it's like to be in prison. And I say that with, some jest, but it's like I told you times where people ask me for my opinion from a re-engagement perspective. I give it to them. They're like, well, we can't do that. We're in a building. We can't do that. I'm like, that's the problem with being in the building. Why can't we do that? Why can't I? Now, this is a tough one. I can sign out for my lunch. I can leave the building for my lunch if I want. Nobody can stop me from doing that. Can I sign out and leave the building during my preparation time? No. That's a sticky issue. I need to talk to admin. I need them to do this and that. But imagine if I went to my admin and said, yo, Jimmy hasn't been at school in 3 weeks. I'm going to pull a re engagement. I'm going to go to his house, ring the doorbell, and see if he'll come out and talk to me. Well, why would you do that? Well, because it's proven to me that that helps build relationship and it delivers a message that can't be delivered when you don't do it. I've experienced that for 3 years. I know what that's like. Well, the principal might say, "Okay, I'll let you do it this time, but this isn't gonna be a habit." And it's like, well, why? Is it because you think I'm just gonna sign out for my prep time every day and I'm just not around anymore? Is it because other people are gonna be like, "Where's Roland? Why does he get to leave for his prep time? We can't leave for our prep time?" This is the nonsense that we start to get into when we're back in a building. When we're back in the 4 walls. When I was outside of the 4 walls, everybody's like, "Man, the job you're doing is wonderful. Thank God you're there." Now that I'm inside the 4 walls again, they're like, "What? No, we don't do that shit here." They either come or they don't come. But I think if I went to their house and I rang the doorbell, I'm like, "Yo, come out and talk to me. What can we do here?" I think that that might be the olive branch that they don't see right now. No, we don't do that here. We work in the building. They come to us. Yeah, but when I went to them, it was a whole other dynamic. We don't do that here. Okay, we don't do that here. I've met up with a few parents over the last 2 years who have said to me, I've ended up in a meeting with them. They're like, "You're here now?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, "What are you doing here?" "I'm an IEP monitor." "Oh, will you come to my house like you used to do when you were
Yeah.
engaged and talk to my kid?" And then always somebody else in the room says, "No, he doesn't do that anymore." And I'm looking at them like, "Why are you answering the question for me?" They're like, "No, we don't do that here." I'm like, "I guess we don't do that here." I could leave every day at lunch if I wanted. That's my prerogative. I sign out, I make sure I sign back in, and I'm not late. But if I want to do that for my prep, I think my admin team would be open. They'd probably give me the, "I don't you we can't do this all the time." I'm sure I'd get some of that. Even for my e-learn time, I think I Gary and I talked about this. Wouldn't it be awesome if I could go to one of the schools in my system where there's a handful of kids that are in my e-learn course, that I could go to their school, go into their library, and let them and their guidance counselors know I'm in the building. If they wanna check in with me, can you please allow them to leave period 5 for 10 minutes to come check in with me? I'm their e-learn teacher. I just wanna make a personal connection. My admins approved it, don't worry about it. Your admins approved it, don't worry about it. These are the things I think of that are me injecting myself into my work, but other people are like, "You're nuts. Why would you do that?" Well, because I think it's gonna benefit the kids. And okay, let's be selfish here for a second, right? It's not all about the kids. Man, it's like a breath of fresh air. I get out of my building, I do something different, different neurons fire in my brain. I can get some dopamine hit too. Like, why not? Well, because we don't do that. You can't friggin' do that. Then every e-learn teacher is gonna wanna do that. Really? Will some abuse it? Sure. Sure they will. But these are the things I think of, but now I see it. It's strong. Back in the building now. I'm expected to be in the building. And I just don't right now, I don't feel like I have the energy or the strength to make these arguments the way I'm talking about them here with you. But it might happen this year because I told my admin, this is the year I innovate. I do things differently this year because I learned from last year. And because you're permitting me to continue to do what works for me, what I'm giving you is my promise to innovate, to inject myself, to make things better. I think it's a fair trade. I don't know. I'd love to hear from Gary and Rochelle. What do you think of that? What are your thoughts on that? And maybe you don't, maybe your thoughts, maybe you think I'm nuts because maybe you've never been out of the room. You've always been in a school. And so to you, it's like, no, in a school, we stay in the school. And I'm like, I think we need to shift a little bit when we see different practices and how they can work positively.
I think what I like about this, and you and I did, we've talked about this, but not recently, and it may be something worthwhile. You know, we tend to flit, whatever is our fancy in a conversation. I do hope, maybe at least in some of the episodes in the second half of season 9, um, I think you and I have touched on innovation. We've talked about it again and again and again. I think we've modeled it. But from a leadership perspective, this is the kind of, you know, it touches a little bit like what I was saying, like, why are you here? Are you here at somebody else's behest? Are you there because you want to be? One of the statements that has given me some good feels is that, for better for worse, one of the things that I was told by an individual about throwing my name into the hat was because they want some chaos, and they assume that that's one of my character traits. Now, professional chaos maker, I don't have that. I don't have that, that AQ. It's not that. But I do go in and I start playing with the dials and the knobs and the buttons, and I'll open a drawer, cupboard. I'll ask a question that is, sometimes, actually often, I'll ask questions that other people are like, oh, he asked that question. And I do, because I like to turn the stone and, play with the 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 clicky things. And I can find many things to fidget with in a system. I don't hear much about, when we talk about the pillars or whatever they call it in your jurisdiction, but like, say, the pillars, domains, the modalities of leadership, there's an element there that I just haven't come across too much. And it's and I'm going to give a hat tip here to the OG, Stephen Hurley. What he was doing with his whole concept of bringing together podcasters. I'm even forgetting the name of it. What was it, Ed? What was the name of his sort of like the Ed? What did we call that?
What?
You and I both had our podcast there.
Oh, the Ed Can.
No, not Ed Can.
No? Oh,
Voice Ed. Woo! I had to dig for that. So Voice Ed, back to our humble beginnings, or it was part of our humble beginnings. But his title on that was lead catalyst, right? He wasn't the president. He wasn't the CEO. And I've come back to that a couple of times. I'm like, that's pretty clever, because being catalyst means you're kind of comfortable with it's like being the host of a dinner party. Now, it was narrow banded. It was education based, right? So as far as we're sorted, it's like the theme for the party is, it's education. But he drew in a lot of different voices into the discussion. And I can't help but think that there was some genius to that. Like, he knew to a degree that individuals coming in with different voices might start messing with the ecosystem a little bit. And I think you and I, with our iterations, tried to play with it a little bit. I don't think we were encouraged, though. I don't think we were developed. I don't think we were promoted. I think he was just kind of happy having us in the room. So doing the Barbara Grande, you're rolling Shediac Connects. We commented, somewhere around season 2 in a bit of a cheeky, ego-driven way that we're surprised and not surprised that he didn't reach out to us. Well, I guess he did back in the day. There was some conversation about Decoded being a part of that ecosystem. I think one of the challenges was that we weren't willing to schedule. So he's like, when the hell do I put you in? So we can't go live. I think we did have a moment where we thought, could we be live on Voice Ed? Could we do that? We never went there. But I like that lead catalyst idea. And if I take that as a critical component of leadership, I wonder, where do we see it? Where do we see leaders that are actively promoting individuals that are doing things on the edge, and they're not looking to take the edge or the niche and automatically let it be consumed by the whole? They just recognize that as some of these positions exist, they actually do need to stay there. But we don't want that role to suffocate, and the individuals that are doing it to feel like there's something special about them, so they need to suffer. Funding has to follow, supports have to follow, professional development has to follow. the homogeneousness of education, like that beast consumes. And part of what you and I talked about with that engagement, and when they folded the role, as in kind of lopped it off, we did have some conversations about, okay, you watch, this is going to pop up in another version. They're going to take the template and make it work internally somewhere. Now, I don't know if that's happened. I don't know if you observe it, but it does give some interesting kind of like oomph to how you're operating now. The system benefits. The system benefits from your experience because you're in there now shaking up conversations. How do we do things kind of differently? Can I do this kind of thing? But I don't see this idea of incubator catalytic thinking where I do get this kind of dried out kind of mindset that somehow the only way that we can be good in our job is to follow the paths that have already been well worn. There isn't this really, there isn't this space. And I get it. If we anoint a space as this is the space where we do creative thinking, then in the same way we're systematizing creative thinking. I get that. I get what I'm saying. But I haven't met a lot of leaders. And I take this with a very small bit of seasoning on it that said to me directly, are you going to put your name, you're going to put your name in for this because I need you to come in here and kind of shake things. Like that's a dangerous statement to make to if I were a true wrecker, that's a dangerous little bit of power to give me. Go in here and F things up. I'm going extreme, but whatever the version of that is in education, right? Don't stick around. Don't worry about sticking around necessarily, but come in and mess things up a little bit. Turn the knobs. Plug, unplug, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on. Let's see what happens. There's a little part of my brain, the little Chris is like, okay, all right, all right. If that's what you're kind of looking for. The professional side is like, you have to stick around to sort of clean up whatever you mess up, and you have to leave it better than you found it. But that innovation is one thing, but innovation, I think, it can also, this is where I think the problem kind of is. I think what we've done is we've kind of franchised innovation. We've normalized innovation way too much. And the outcome, which is I think we've kind of moved innovation as a manageable outcome now. But I kind of like the chaos of innovation and how do we exist there a little bit longer? Your role became chaotic once the rules of COVID no longer applied. That was the strapping. That was the strapping. That was the chains on your role. Your evidence that you found, notwithstanding that we actually need to have this more permanently, you and I said this on the pod, COVID just shined a light on some of these students that were languishing. Your creativity said, I'm going there. And people didn't have the brakes. The system didn't have the brakes to say stop. They had to go the other way. Like, how do we make you safe? How do we make you safe if this is the way that we have to operate? I want more of that. I want more of that where we're not using the rules of education to build better education. We're actually recognizing that some of the rules are the walls on education, and they're not support walls. They're just the walls that make it difficult to get to the kids or to get to our colleagues. So I like this. I want to find myself in conversations moving forward, and maybe we'll find some space to talk about this. But this idea of risk and chaos and creativity, I feel like it's been completely stripped from our discussions around innovation. We're risk averse now. We've pulled that out of that process of finding new ways and new things to do with education. Probably like in light of the boards that are being taken over, like we're going to be in risk averse for a while. Everyone's going to be playing nice with this sort of fear, like we don't want. And I can see, Gary dropped into the chat there. I like the idea of reflecting on current practices and exploring how they may be reimagined. I would love to know, because I feel like the word exploring is kind of loaded, right? Okay, Gary, let's explore that. And I don't mean to, I'm not targeting Gary, but I would sort of be sitting across the table and I would probably ask, what are your rules for exploration? Tell me about the boundaries. Tell me about the safeties. Tell me about the line that I can't cross. Or is this a safe space? Can I just have can I have some safety here? Can we pull down that cone of silence for a second and just talk freely about this? And then we can pop it back up and we can be strategic about it. I don't think until we actually unpack this that I gave enough consideration to the impact of you transitioning out of that role into general population with the whole heart of understanding that you have about the direct connection between the skills that you used and often on your own tab until a couple people are like, okay, yep, that's good. You just intuitively use tools of education in a different way that hadn't been lensed that way before, and then formalized it in order to protect you according to the rules of education. I did not, until this conversation right now, consider that there would still be echoes of that. Like, oh man, like I did and do, at least as my observation of your career, see that as an apex moment. An apex moment that was like not orchestrated at all. Like you found yourself there with the right tools, the right intuition, and it was catalytic. I think it was catalytic for the board. Even if we're not seeing current examples of it, I think it held a great mirror up to the board.
Everything about it was great to me. Yeah, I remember even reading the job posting and applying to it and just feeling, I don't know, it all fit. It all fit because how many times have I sat at my computer at the end of a school day, looked at a job posting, been like, yeah, delete or whatever. And this one was just like, wow, wow, this is so cool. Even the superintendent who was responsible for that portfolio, I was excited to work with. They ended up retiring at the end of that school year, but uh, everything about it was just so attractive. And at the time, it was a 1-year position. We will hold your spot at your school. We will hold your spot in your current grade for 1 year, and then you'll just return back to where you left. Like, it was just the only sad thing was that I was gonna be leaving what I was doing, and you know that I wasn't what I was hating those days was the whole pandemic stuff, but I was happy at the school I was at, I was happy at the grade I was in, I was happy with my administrators and the people around me, like, there was no, Roland shopping to leave.
Mhm.
It just came to my attention, and I thought, "Oh my god, this is this looks really awesome." I don't know, Gary might be able to tell us. I know my administrators will probably bring it to my attention if they were directed to have this type of work happen in a different way. I haven't heard anything from any administrators or from Gary about, "Hey, they're doing re-engagement again," or "They're doing it like this," or whatever. I know we still have the grade 12 plus re-engagement teacher. He's still doing his thing, and his work is, "Oh, Jimmy is in grade 12 or 13, hasn't been to school in a whole semester, needs, like, 3 credits to graduate. He's on your list, go get him." And I remember talking to him about that work, and he's like, "Yeah, I called him up. We meet at a Tim Hortons. We devise a plan. This kid's gonna go to the adult learning center, take these credits. He's gonna do co-op through Bosco. You know, a year later, Bob's your uncle. You've got your diploma. That's like heavy lifting. I look at him and I'm like, that is some heavy lifting, but it's not a full-time job in the board. It's like a part-time, like, I don't know, 0.6% or 0.60% out of 100. And most of his work is at night or on the weekends. It's rogue, right? It's kitchen work. You're working hours nobody wants to work. You're dealing with kids that maybe nobody wants to deal with, or there's nothing in the system for these kids, but he exists. So I think of him sometimes and I wonder how he's doing, because when we talk about our work, that was his work. He'd get a list of names and then he'd hammer away and figure out, okay, how do we make this happen? How do I build a pathway for this student to want them to finish their high school and get their diploma? How do I do that? So he still exists, but I've not heard about what I was doing, kind of living within the system. And I'm glad I got to do it. And but all good things come to an end. And you and I were talking about this in the on ramp about, when I was talking to you about where I am today, but where I see myself going. There are a lot of good things about where I am today that will go away if I'm able to move in the direction that I want. But all good things come to an end. Doesn't last forever. And I think when I think forever, that becomes problematic for me. I knew re-engagement would end, but the way it ended, that wasn't fun. How it ended wasn't fun. But again, as I told you in the on ramp, a lot of good things have come from it. A lot of great learning for me has come from that. And I need to keep that in mind the next time somebody drops a bomb on me that I really don't like.
I want to also put into just the mix of this. I know every once in a while we throw something at Gary's feet, other administrators' feet. I also think that there's an element of, if we're talking about this catalytic thinking, we're talking about, kind of some of the chaos. So I think the adults in the system that aren't formal leaders, I wish they would step up and be a little bit more chaotic in a creative way. I do really believe that, and I firmly believe this, and I've noticed it, and I have evidence, I have receipts that administrators in the system are are like, they're there with all different kind of skill sets, and this idea that um, we wait for permission to do the right thing, and I get that that's a loaded statement, to do the right thing. But to be brave and to be let's say, a creative educator, and push into these spaces and hold ground in these spaces, and get into the meeting where these spaces may be about to be discussed or shut down or ended. I think that's more important than an administrator being curious about this kind of like catalytic thinking. Like, I think you can build this invisible capacity inside your schools and inside the system if you can actually find alignment with other individuals that want to push into those spaces. And it's not exactly do the thing and then ask for forgiveness afterwards. I don't think that's it. I think that's a little bit too extreme version. I think that this idea of being risky or risk tolerant in your have a great weekend, Rochelle. I think being risk tolerant and actually risk fluent is important. we're getting a lot of moments where we're being kind of like feared into not acting and following kind of like company policy. But it doesn't mean to shut everything down. It might just be that early warning, like, okay, let's sit on this for a sec. We don't have to develop any farther. It doesn't have to be the biggest version of what we're trying to sort of create here, but we can do kind of like a like a beta version here, and let's test drive it. We don't have to stop all production. But just back to what I was originally saying, like it isn't admins. I don't think it's necessarily their job to give the permission for us to be creative. I would say more so it's the creative's job to make sure they're seen and to make sure that what they are creating gets a viewership outside of their own heads, so that you can slowly build this capacity from within where more people are kind of doing things. I think back to some of the AI presentations that I did in first semester, and the board's view was that we should be doing staff meeting presentations. My view is that's the last space I'm going to be. I'm just going to keep marketing. Come on in, give me 5 people, give me 6 people, give me 4 people, give me 1 person. But the individuals that are willing to kind of listen to what you can do with these things. And I managed to build this really kind of like drip drop capacity where I managed to connect with about a third of the staff at my school. And to be able to connect with a third of your staff, I don't believe happens at a staff meeting. I don't think, and you have all of them in the room. And I would challenge anyone to firmly account for, do you actually think what percentage of the people in that room do you think you had a good connection with? I can affirm that over whatever it was, 4-6 weeks time, I managed to make a good connection with 30% of the staff. A little bit of that slow growth. So yeah, I want to sort of pull back a little bit, my line about saying, let's support some of this chaos and this risk taking and people that are kind of doing things differently. I don't think the first step should be seeking approval from our leadership. I think you want to test drive some betas. And when I say that, you're test driving betas not in an illegal sense or unethical sense. You're just pushing into these new areas of thinking with a little bit of irreverence, but with, the absolute understanding and acceptance that OCT, OSSTF, ETFO, like you have all these sort of like your board, they're creating rule sets that you need to follow. I don't have a lot of people that are pushing into that space right now at work. A lot of people that are excellent at their jobs. Why are they there? To deliver what the board's looking for. That's a yes and for me. It's not just a yes period. It's a yes and. What's that one more thing you're kind of working on? What's for breakfast?
I already had breakfast.
Did you? Good for you.
I did. I had breakfast. I pulled a Clough this morning and stuck to my regular daily routine.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Literally, it is good for you.
Literally, yeah. It is good for you.
Yeah, that isn't a thudding, just a saying.
Anything else you want to drop, dude?
No, man. We finally have our first stage read, our reading tomorrow for the play I'm directing. So that's kind of cool. We couldn't have it on the Tuesday. We were supposed to have it on the Tuesday this week, but there were complications. And then we were scheduled for the Wednesday, and then we had a snow day, the snowpocalypse. So our next day is tomorrow. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to see a buddy's play this afternoon, which is kind of cool. And I have some people. I've been navigating the Facebook Marketplace jungle. So I have somebody that, in theory, is coming by at 10 a.m. this morning to buy something. We'll see. My message. It is not fun navigating that. Staying on top of those messages. having my notifications constantly pop, and it's not fun. But it's the way you got to go in this attempt for me to get the house cleaned up a little bit and get rid of stuff, right? So,
Is such and such still available? Find all those
exactly.
DMs like that, yeah.
Yeah, well, because now you could all you have to do is point and click for that, right? It doesn't even have to be, and it even comes up, Chris, is this still available? I'm like, that's a button you can press.
Uh-huh.
My profile talking to your profile through a single touch, right? So
I'm glad you told me about the reading because I thought you did it the other day, but I guess not.
we tried. I ended up hosting a social. I just put out a Google Meet offer, and I had 5 of the actors show up. We just sat and talked about, their process and what brought them to it. It was nice. So I think I'm going to include that as our process moving forward. I'll do these little pop-up socials, very COVID-esque, I said to them. But, grab a coffee, grab a beverage, and we'll just kind of talk about where you're at in your process. Talk me through your process. Theater style.
I love it, and I'm happy that you've learned from the COVID experience that you can still use the online world to benefit everybody. I love that because you said something earlier that made me think that the education system dropped the ball in some respects. The way we operated during COVID, we've let go of some of the really good things that came from that because it's easier to go back to normal. But in some ways, like if it weren't for the e-learning courses being so popular, I wouldn't be able to teach them, and I prefer having those. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, bro, thanks for the talk today.
Yeah, thanks to you too. Thanks to Gary and Rochelle for hanging.
Yeah,
That's cool.
always appreciate them jumping in. And to anybody else who's listening, whether it was live or recorded after, thanks for checking it out. Reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. Yeah, in the future. I wanted to change my little saying here, wondering grateful. That doesn't apply today, but I never got to it. Oh, well.
Roland Chidiak is wondering grateful. Chris J. Clough is
at Chris J. Clough.
At Chris J. Clough, yeah.
Okay, dude. We go. Have a great day and weekend.
You too, brother.
This was season 9, episode 23, number 371 of the Decoded Podcast. Peace.
Peace, man.